All right, thank you, STEM cadre. I just wanted to take a moment to kind of go over a lesson and see what your feedback is. So I just want to take a moment. This is one of several cheapo activities that I've worked on. This is probably, I think, the 5th or 6th one. So I'm kind of honing the idea here. It basically sort of works around the idea of students creating models for the novice teacher. Sort of the idea of the best way to learn something is to teach it. So I just want to read this, read it over with you, and take a look at it. It says, of course, got the cheapo logo. It says, "Greetings. Your team has been selected by Cheapo Toy and Omega-3 Fish Oil Incorporated LLC." I usually try to put something that really doesn't make sense. There's one that I did recently. It was Cheapo Toy and Animal Husbandry. I think students were like, and I have to tell them, like, it's not what you think it means. You have been hired to provide research and development in our latest endeavor. Cheapo Toy has recently acquired a contract with the school board to create and prepare demonstration models for novice teachers. And again, that idea of the best way to learn something is to teach it. The assignment is to create working pop-up models of Earth's plate boundaries. And so I have a couple of examples here. All right, these are the larger versions. Here is a convergent boundary, a continental to continental. You have this here. A transform boundary.
We can't see it. Turn to it.
Transform boundary. Move that. And a divergent boundary, oceanic.
Ooh.
All right.
Very cool.
And here is the smaller version of the continental to continental. All right, so it says so we previously hired a group of professional engineers and scientists to develop the boundary models. However, they proved to be too expensive, so we fired them. Before we sent them packing, we confiscated the designs they had already completed. Their designs are great, but they are too large for what we can afford. Cheapo would like you to rebuild them exactly 40% smaller. So that was the idea of the math component to the STEM there. You will need to measure in centimeters and provide specific data in a report back to us. The materials you have for this construction are 1 slightly wrinkled manila folder, 1 half-used roll of invisible tape, 1 pair of rusty scissors, 1 crooked ruler, and a few dried-up markers. Again, it's cheapo. Also, an informational summary of the boundaries must be included. Your team will research the individual boundary and provide facts for the novice teacher to easily and cheaply instruct. The summary must include, and this is right out of the curriculum map for 9th grade. This is what I was making it for. Right for.
We do this in 7th.
What's that?
We do this in 7th.
Yeah, this is. It could be adapted. Yes, this is right from Earth Space, week 7 through 9, going over plate values. Earth Space is essentially a repeat of middle school, 7th and 8th grade. So it ties in, it can tie into middle school, as long as, you could do that in your middle school, as long as you're not one of Deltona High School speeders.
Actually, no, I'm not, so I would like to do this activity.
Okay. The summary must include type of boundary / fault, convergent, divergent, transform. All of this is directly from the curriculum map. The type of crust, continental, oceanic, garlic butter. I'm going to try to throw stuff in there. Resultant geological phenomena. I'm going to throw some vocabulary in there. Earthquakes, rift valley, trench, subduction zone, mid-ocean ridge, volcanic activity, seafloor spreading, continental drift. All of that's from the vocabulary section. Explain how these occur. Your report and informational summary will be written on the provided form on the back of this communication. Sincerely, Morgan Freeman. So here you have on the back, this is what they would be putting their information on their report. And of course, they'd have to take one of the boundaries. Now, there's several more that I wanted to construct with you, as I mentioned earlier, shown you earlier. These were the examples that I came up with previously. So there's a couple more that I need to make. It would be the continental to continental divergent boundary as well. There's a few other ones. But here is an example of this particular one. This is the convergent continental to continental, and this is what the original that would have been made by the engineers and scientists, and then this is pretty much what a student would have to create. This is exactly 60%, so I went through and measured it, and so they have to go through it and show the mathematic component to that. So that basically sums it up. Does anybody have any suggestions or maybe ideas that I could improve this lesson? Really, honestly, at Deltona High School, there isn't a whole lot of technology. We're not Title I. We don't have a lot of stuff to go around. And in Earth Space, that poor guy, Mr. Harris, brand new teacher, Barbara Bates left. If you guys know Barbara Bates, she left second week, and Mr. Harris come in. It's actually kind of a, I don't want to sound negative, but it was actually kind of a good thing, because the moment that I met Barbara, she was like, "Hi, I've got 227 kids. I'm not doing any labs." So that's when I introduced myself. And Mr. Harris is just coming in. He's brand new. He's like, "Yeah, I'll do some labs. Anything that we can do to really get these kids motivated, because there's not a whole lot going on. It's worksheets and more worksheets and textbook and PowerPoints, and that's what I'm seeing. And I'm really trying to inject something that they can do that's hands-on, that really doesn't need a whole lot of. There's enough inspires to go along, and a lot of those kids don't have cell phones where we could do a Kahoot. So, yes."
Well, I was thinking, this could be like the second part of it. I would have them construct a full-size one, just using the manila folder, and then go back and say, okay, here's what you made, now I need you to make it 40% smaller. So they actually have an opportunity.
They're working off their own work.
Yes, they're working off their own work, but what I'm looking at is those big ones, they're easier to manipulate.
Yes.
And once they already have that down over there, now let's make it smaller.
That's a great idea. One of the things that I was thinking of is one of the big ideas is seafloor spreading, where you need to have a divergent boundary and a convergent boundary. So what I was thinking was there could be an initial piece to where they could create something with a manila folder, but was more basic, that would show that.
Well, that's right, because we do the 3 basic boundaries in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And so maybe even start from that, and then maybe have the 40%, now let's make it something smaller. So it gives them that base to go smaller. Yeah, a small model.
Yes. The one right here?
Well, the other question is, if they create one in the full size, could they create a different boundary at that smaller size, so they're not doing the same thing twice?
Yeah.
But they're still.
But you could also do that with your ESC in your separate class, where you could be doing the same thing but smaller, and then take it to the next level where you're doing the different boundaries, and maybe even have them share out.
And I'd like somewhere where they're writing down their measurements for doing the 40% smaller, so that we can see.
The thought process.
Yeah.
Some reflection. Chris, what about if they did, you have this happening, but somewhere else the opposite is happening? What if they had the part, this is what's going on here, but now here's the effect somewhere else? If they could tie that in like that.
Like with seafloor spreading, where they have the,
Right.
where you have the mid-ocean ridge, and then
Like
So
you
you
have
pull that in
the
at the
ripple
end.
effect.
Okay.
I have a question
Yes.
logistically. How many, if there's 200 and some kids, how many of those initial large ones do you have? Because could you give the kids a blueprint and then show that as a model, so
Well,
they could measure the blueprint?
The idea was to make perhaps several of these, and they would be a class like a class set, to where I could say, all right, well, this group of 4 is going to do the continental to continental convergent, and then they have to duplicate that. And then you have another group that was going to work on a divergent boundary, another one with a transform boundary, and then one of the final components would be a share. It's not written here, but the idea was to have a share out, like this
It's
is
almost
what's
like a
happening.
jigsaw.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're not all making them all, you have a group?
No, just one, and then they get, well, this is what this does, and then they had to share out. I didn't include it in this part of it, but that was, one of the concepts that I
So
was
each
thinking
group
of.
becomes the expert, teaching the other
Essentially, yeah.
students.
Yeah.
And I think that's so worthwhile.
And they've been doing nothing but worksheets,
Oh, this
and
is
it's,
fantastic.
I just want to get something to them that they can do without, and then Mr. Harris could do this on his own without me there, like trying to facilitate something with, because I have some Inspires, but I have an Inspire cart, it's just one, and I'm the only one that's trained there to use it, so I'd have to be in the classroom all the time with it, so I want to think of something they can do.
You also want them to start seeing their teachers more.
Right.
Yeah,
So you
like
want
he's
them
got
to be in
control,
charge,
exactly.
yeah.
And if El Cheapo got more money, and weren't so cheap, maybe they could donate things like styrofoam or clay or Play-Doh to actually make the relief model on top of that pop-up.
Well, that's one
Oh,
of the
so all of
other.
a sudden they had an influx of cash
Oh.
and wanted to donate.
Now
It's
you're
kind of like an
talking
MBA,
about
like the twist.
Yeah.
Like a budget.
Create a budget.
Create a budget.
Oh, yeah.
That would be
That's
good. I was
an
thinking
MBA
about
right
the budget part.
They
of
have
it.
some
Did you
relief.
have a question?
Well, I was just gonna make a suggestion that about after they make their models, that maybe the groups could then present to the rest of the class